PSTA, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none. Let's go on to the action items. Do we have a motion for the January minutes?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. We'll go on to the legislative priorities. Clearwater Beach, express funding.
Natalie, would you like to
Absolutely.
give
So,
us any updates on these?
well, legislative phone calls to FDOT, there's a question mark there. Is there a specific?
Well, the strategy that we came up with for implementing this was to ask our legislators to make phone calls or
Okay.
not a joint letter, but a.
Okay, that's what okay, I wasn't sure how that was phrased. So we went and obviously we had our delegation, we went and saw all of our delegation members as we could when we were in Tallahassee. And so the ask of them is, since we want to have this funding item, as we had the approach in the years past, is to have this included in the FDOT's work plan. We had, over the summer, contemplated having a joint letter done, but what we're looking to do now is have them have a direct contact to make phone calls to let them know that this is a priority for their community. So that is what is underway there. So I mean, that's how we left it with them. And so we'll be doing follow-up over the next couple of weeks with them as we start session next week to make sure that those calls are happening and to continue to encourage them, and also make sure that if there's any questions or any confusion around, the projects, that we're making sure that we're continuing to stay in touch with them. So.
Do you have any questions or suggestions or? Yes.
Question. What is the ask there, the annual ask that we're asking DOT to fund?
Do you have a copy?
$2.1 million per year.
And
that's the total expected cost.
Is that, and how much would FDOT fund? Would they fund the whole thing?
Well, I think what we've asked our legislators to do is ask for the full $2.1 million. Alan Susky, are you on the phone?
Yeah, I'm here, Brad.
Oh, hey, Alan. Alan and I did talk about, and Alan, maybe you did speak to some legislators about the idea of, doing a pilot program, either for 3 years or for some period of time. And as the second line on your agenda shows, we would try to seek a local match that would cover part of the $2.1 million from the Tourist Development Council, perhaps. Or that's one idea for a local match. If the DOT can't pay for, doesn't decide to pay for the full $2.1 million to get this service up and running, maybe we could match it with local TDC funds, since this is a tourist-oriented service. That's the concept. And Alan, maybe you did talk to folks about it being a pilot start or something like that.
Yeah, so the conversation we had, we kind of laid out both options. That our first request is for DOT to fully fund it in perpetuity. I mean, I think that's our first crack at it. But we offered up some other options to include a pilot to see what the ridership would be, to see how it would go. Maybe a 2-year commitment, a 3-year commitment, as Brad mentioned. And really, the reaction that we got from the legislators was right in line with what we had recommended, which is they would prefer to make the full ask, just to take DOT temperature, see what their reaction would be to that. And if it seemed like we were getting pushback on it being a long-term, somewhat permanent project or permanent scope of a project, then we could go back and say, okay, well, if you don't want to do that, then let's turn it into a pilot. And so that was kind of the feedback that we initially got, and I think that's where we're going to start. Is again, those phone calls, as Natalie mentioned, will really be for the full ask. And if we start getting pushback, at any level, or if it seems like they'd like some sort of compromise or some sort of comfort language that we're going to try this out first, then we'll kind of fall back on a 2 or 3 year pilot program.
But we want to be careful not to start negotiating against ourselves, because they have not yet told us that they're not willing to do the full thing. We don't want to be putting out
Yeah,
there
exactly.
publicly that we have a different
plan.
landing spot, as we call it in Tallahassee, because again,
Exactly.
so right now, our ask is the full amount. We don't want to start giving negotiations that are lesser than what our full ask is.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
And I'm not sure where you, I'm not sure that there's any funding that would be eligible from TDC. I know that's a constant question, but transportation funding is not typically one of the listed items in the TDC statutes that you can spend bed tax money on, so I'm not sure. You can do a marketing deal, but that would be nowhere near kind of funds that you're talking about, 2.1 million or half of that or anything like that, so.
Well, and to that point, Brad and I had the conversation on Monday, I'm obviously on the TDC now, and I guess our legal, Alan Zimmett's opinion is different than PSTA's legal opinion on that, although the TDC says no, they're not funding that ask, so.
Well, one, you'd have to go through the normal annual budget. There's a
Right.
budget the TDC has, and you can spend it on marketing, operating a CVB, or capital, and only certain capital, as you're
Right.
fully aware of, items. So the only thing that I've seen statewide exceptions to that are if it's like a convention center and you have an internal bus system in a convention center or something like that. But as far as transportation in general, it's not one of the listed things, so you'd have to be pretty creative, I guess, or get the statute changed.
Well, and I'm sorry that Commissioner Long is not here, because much of what I know about this comes from her.
Sure.
She knows more about it, but as Mayor Beavis, you attended your first TDC meeting. My understanding is that the TDC, maybe for the first time or recently, conducted a solicitation for maybe just capital requests and got a number of capital requests in. PSTA turned in an application, but I guess it was deemed to be turned in late through the process. The other issue is it's not capital. It is more it's operational, and there's then so the question of whether we got it in on time is one thing that needs to be cleared up. The timing, as Natalie points out, might be opportune, not to have the funding in hand, which we clearly don't with the TDC, because we want to ask the FDOT for the full amount, which is the only our best shot we've got. The other issue is whether it's legally even possible to use TDC funds, and I know this issue was explored by both Commissioner Long and Alan Zimmet contacted the attorney that the county assigns to the TDC, and the word I got back, the word that Alan told me, and I'm pretty sure Commissioner Long, the same thing, is as long as it's a tourist-oriented transportation service, focused on the tourists, which this would clearly be, then it would be eligible for TDC dollars. But you said that the attorney at your meeting
Seemed
said
to
something
indicate
different.
that wasn't the case, and, if Commissioner Long was here, she could probably elaborate. She was gonna have a follow-up meeting with,
Yeah.
I think it's the assistant county attorney. or
Michael
something.
Zoss is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
attorney for the
Zoss.
TDC.
Oh,
Okay.
Well-
And I would just put out,
There she is right
speak
now.
of the devil.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm sorry, I'm hobbling.
Uh-oh.
Oh, sorry.
and then before we leave that topic, I think just be mindful of the fact that we, as a state right now, one of the number one conversations and conflicts that is ongoing at the state capitol is the structure, governance, existence, and funding for such things as Enterprise Florida, Visit Florida, and what is being spent at the local level in our TDCs. So, again, there's a lot going on there. They have their hands full with a lot of other conversations as the Senate and the House negotiate through the bills that have been filed, how that entire scheme is going to look statewide for all tourist development dollars, all marketing dollars, all Visit Tampa Bay, all those kind of dollars. So we'll have to be mindful of that as well.
Sure. No, I mean, they're obviously now they're bifurcating the Visit Florida from the Enterprise Florida, which is a good step, I think. But the funding levels at the state level might change because it'll be negotiating the budget. But the Senate's not going to take up the dissolution of either of those entities. And even if they did, the governor would veto them. And so it's not going to affect our local TDC, at least this year. We're talking about TDC funding for transit operations.
And the opinion of council after our TDC, at our TDC meeting.
Oh,
Yes.
well, thank you for bringing that up, because I do intend to have a conversation with him about it. I met with him yesterday, and I was so wound up in everything else we were doing, I forgot. But I don't think he's accurate in that assessment, and I'll tell you why. There is precedent, you may remember this. There is precedent in other parts of the state about how bed tax money has been sent for transportation improvements if you can tie it to tourism. And I don't know about anyone sitting around this table, but I could surely make a strong argument for transporting tourists from the airport out to Clearwater Beach is a definite tourism issue, right? Don't you think? Remember when they
It
did
is a tourist operation. It's just, and again, I'm not an attorney, but it's not listed in the statute. So I don't.
How did they do it then? They did it in Orlando.
What I have been told was that if it is part of, if you build a convention center, which is one of the specifically listed items, and it's part of that convention center, you build a transit hub or something like that, that's one thing. But as far as operations of your traditional bus system, maybe this is special enough that it would qualify. I don't know, but it's not a specific listed item. And if you read the statutes of those 5 categoricals, it's.
I was thinking more along a little light rail thing from the airport out to the beach, or Darryl Leclerc's
You know,
CBT
if you,
cable
I don't know what
system.
a technical definition of a museum is, but if you want to make it a transportation museum, that's a moving museum, I guess you can make that case. I don't
Rosa
know.
Park buses.
You know, again, you have to be creative, I guess.
You saw all the environmental, the birds and all the beautiful stuff they're gonna put on those cars over at the airport.
I think you just have to, I'm not fighting it, I'm just telling you that
I know, but
it's,
it's a good conversation.
you want to have it to where you're not planning it, designing it, building it, and then have it subject to legal challenge, which,
Right.
from what I understand, I'm new on the PSTA, but there's a few people that like to challenge things that you do legally,
You
so.
think so?
Oh, come on.
Thank you for noticing.
So, thank you for this discussion, and welcome Chairman Long. We are on item 4A, talking about
Right,
going through our
where-
legislative
Where is
priorities.
our little guy? I can't seem to get the PSTA piece. No, that's our,
I know, you're on the.
I'm trying to move it, but it won't go.
There you
Oh,
go.
there we go. Be helpful if I push the right buttons, right? Okay. Now we go back here. Come on. Oh, Charlie, help me out there.
There you go.
I don't see the legislative.
It's item 4.
Well, I know I gotta get the legislative thing on here. It's not on here.
Are you
The
ready
last time
to
you were updated was February 23rd.
hit the,
There you go. Now join.
Oh, here we go. Thank you. I'm a little slow today.
So, we're on item 4, which is, we're going through the 4 state priorities that our board adopted, and the number 1 priority was this Clearwater Beach to the airport express service, and we were discussing how, and Alan Susky is on the phone.
Hi, Alan.
And he,
Hey, Commissioner.
he reiterated what we discussed with our legislative delegation was to ask the for them to contact the Florida DOT and ask the Florida DOT to support 100% of the cost of the service, which is $2.1 million a year estimated. We did talk, or Alan has had some conversations with legislators about, well, if $2.1 million in perpetuity is not possible, maybe a pilot of some length of time, 2 or 3 years, maybe, or maybe some sort of funding that required maybe a match. Although Natalie cautions against negotiating against ourselves. So the $2.1 million is our ask in Tallahassee. At the same time, we did at your urging, put in a request for a possible matching source from the TDC. There were a couple issues with that you just walked in on. Number one is we turned in an application, I think,
2 weeks after the deadline.
we missed the deadline, but I think, was the application process for the capital projects?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is not capital. This, is there another process that the TDC has for?
The elite funding,
Elite event funding.
elite event, but this is not an event.
It's an event every half hour.
I don't know if it's every half hour, I don't know how elite it is, but.
But let's put that over here,
Okay.
because that's a long shot
Yeah.
to get it from the TDC. I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask, and they have done it in other places, and we have to figure out how to tie it to
Yeah.
a specific, and,
Category,
we've
yeah.
got 4 brand-new resorts out there. I'm not sure, do you know, Bill, does one of them have convention center
Well,
status?
They all have meeting
They all
space.
have
Yeah.
meeting space they're
Well,
all
yeah, but
looking at.
isn't there a criteria to be a convention center?
I don't know if there's a legal term for conference center, convention center space.
I don't know either.
But again, it's capital for the development of that convention center, not for the operation of the convention center.
I'm talking about piloting behind what they did in Orlando, to have their little light rail thing.
We can think.
Further analysis needs to occur on the legal issue. I mentioned, I know that Alan Zimmett, our PSTA attorney, had a conversation with, I'm sorry, who did you say?
Michael Zoss.
Michael Zoss last summer, and came to that conclusion that you articulated, that if it is tourist-oriented, at least Alan thought it might be possible to be funded partially
So
with
I
these
would
funds.
suggest, if I might, that this could be an effort that we begin really wrapping our minds around, and considering that, given all of the conversation going on in the region about transportation and transit and better public options, that it could potentially be possible to get that little few words stuck in that statute that opens it up to, if it's tourist related, you can use some of that money for transit relief or something like that. Because there's no question that it's having a direct effect on our ability to move around.
So let me give a little bit of context, because last year there was effort. Senator Gate and Representative Gates at the time, out of the Pensacola Panhandle area, actually tried to move forward with an amendment to the current statute, so that there could be additional usages and definitions about what would be qualified. They were trying to have qualification around lifeguards because of spring break and some of those other safety pieces.
Law
If you
enforcement.
recall this, law
Law
enforcement.
enforcement.
So recall this. There was a lot of opposition to that. So again, I'd be happy to go back and pull, all the statute and do a full assessment of kind of where all that was, because again, I wasn't coming prepared to have that conversation today, but I do know that that would not be, it wouldn't be unfortunately as simple as just slipping a few words into the statute, because I know that it would garner a significant pushback.
Yeah, they hate
from-
to open it, seasoned members hate to open that up, because once they do, a lot of bad stuff can happen.
Well, your priority is transportation and transit. Their priority was law enforcement. Someone else's will be something else. And it's a worthy discussion to have every once in a while about that statute. But it's anything that touches that statute will be a lightning rod, and will be, the spotlight will be fully on.
Especially this year, of all years
Especially-
that I can tell you that Ron and I have been a part of this process, this year, anything to do with that statute is absolutely a hot potato.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we do it this year, it's a little late. Yes,
Madam Chair, if you're
I'm
past
done.
that paragraph. I recall the BALD meeting that was up at Ruth Eckert Hall, where Senator Galvano was talking about needing a cross bay and how, so this seems to fit right with that discussion, so I would hope that we would at least connect to that.
How many members represent that now? I've lost track. It's a lot, right?
Represent Ball?
Ball.
There's 40 members in the Bay Area delegation.
I thought so.
So I just.
But they
and-
don't meet that often, do they?
They meet a couple times a year.
But that was a subject that was addressed during that.
Right. Go.
The other one that I'm wondering about is whether you're working with the city of Clearwater's lobbyist, Martha Edenfield?
I know
Because I
Mar-
believe that this is
Pete and Martha?
on
Know them very
our,
well.
on the city's agenda too. And I made a note to have the city manager poll them to work together on
They
this.
represent the county as well, so.
I mean, we would be happy to reach out to them and set up a time to talk with them. Absolutely.
Well, I'm just looking for more allies and so to hear it from more people.
And we can work on that for next year, but I dare say we're not gonna, it's a futile effort now. Don't you agree, Senator?
You mean Bald or the Pete and Martha?
Both. I mean, session starts in a week and.
The only way I would see it is if you did, there was multiple attempts to open it and it became a free-for-all, or someone slipped it in at the very last minute, an amendment, you know.
No, that never happens.
You know, but that's harder and harder to do these days.
This is Alan. Let me just add one quick piece of information. So there is a bill that the statute is technically open right now. There is a bill out there. Senator Latvala and Representative Latvala filed a bill. Actually, I think it's Senator Grimsley, not Senator Latvala, but she kind of filed it for Senator Latvala, that opened that statute up to add performance halls, specifically for Ruth Eckerd Hall,
Right.
to qualify for the TDC money. So, as Natalie said, even that issue, which obviously all of those performance centers like that are much like things that are already included, that shouldn't be a hot topic, but it is, just for the fact that is open. I can tell you from experience, about I think 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I worked on adding with then Representative Hooper and Senator Latvala, adding aquariums for a certain aquarium that you probably all are very familiar with, to that statute. And it was probably, of all the things I worked on that session, probably the thing that made the most sense, but was the hardest to get done, because you have one of the largest lobbying presence in Tallahassee, and I don't mean this negatively towards them. We work with them on a number of issues, but the Florida Restaurant Lodging Association and organizations such as that they're aligned with do not want that statute open. They don't want that money diluted in any way, shape, or form. They fight very, very passionately against that. They're kind of staying away from the Ruth Eckerd Hall issue because they know how important it is to Senator Latvala, and he supports a number of their other issues, but they're not happy about that either. So I would say, the statute is currently open, and it is, as Natalie said, a very, very, very hot topic and controversial, and going to be hard to even get that done, even with him leading the charge. But to add something like transportation to it this year, I think would be, number one, I don't think the senator would support it. I haven't asked him that question. My guess is he wouldn't, because it's already hot enough. But to add anything transportation related, we know that can get sticky anyway. And so I would say that for this year at least, I agree with Commissioner Long. I don't think it's probably the year to do it, even though there is a vehicle to try. I wouldn't recommend it. I think we'd get told no pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I wouldn't support, as a member of this board, I wouldn't support that for this year either, because I think I think it hurts our credibility. But before you go, Alan, would you please tell Senator Latvala that Ruth Eckerd Hall is poised to become covered under the City of Clearwater's ask?
Okay.
The City of Clearwater,
Okay,
the City of Clearwater added it in to what they need to our ask. So tell them not to worry
Perfect.
too much.
Just to
Well, and we'll be, and Natalie and Ron and I will be with the senator tonight, so I'm sure we can all beat him up a little bit on a number of issues.
Well, don't beat him up too much. He's got a long way to go.
He'll be watching baseball. He'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
just to circle back around, and not necessarily, I agree, we don't want to change the statute, but can we get a meeting of the legal minds and find out
Yeah, that seems
the
to be the first
difference of
step.
opinion between Alan's reading of the statute and the TDC's interpretation of it, and see if there's some compromise?
I'll
or-
work on that.
And just see, because obviously Alan has a different opinion of that, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the first step, is to see if we can get the lawyers to agree whether they believe that, no change to the statute is needed, and, I
Right.
mean, that would be the
That'd be
best case
the
scenario.
ideal thing.
If not, then tell us what
What we should do.
needs to be changed, for a future
Or do we, like
session.
Commissioner of Justice said, do we call it a museum instead of a bus?
You can make it an aquarium and put
We'll
a
have to
fish
get a
tank on
little
it.
creative, but
Yeah.
between now and
Put
then.
statues in it.
What?
We could
Okay,
put
still a lot of
statues in it
money.
or something. Or old people.
My suggestion with Pete and Martha was more on the $2.1 million ongoing funding
Oh,
ask,
please.
not on this
Somebody's-
opening.
We can definitely make, I say it all the time, so I'll just.
Well, we would definitely prefer the 2.1 from one source and.
Well, that's the ideal thing.
Yeah.
You get the DOT to say, hey, we're trying to get other money, but it's just
But
not
didn't we
working.
get $1 million in somewhere? I thought I had that conversation with Ron, and he said that they had put $1 million in.
Well, nothing's been put in yet, but that's number 4C. We haven't gotten there yet.
Oh,
We're still
sorry.
talking about the piece that is what we're working on to put into the actual FDOT work plan. That is a different project technically than the $1 million ask that is an appropriations ask that we're working on. So if we wanted to go, we can move to the next one, or we can skip to that one, if you want to talk about them in tandem, Brad.
Either way. We can go ahead and skip to 4D, or I'm sorry, 4C. 4C is a separate project. It's separate on our legislative priorities. It's tied, it's related, but it is the capital project of building a busway lane on the bridge between Clearwater Beach and downtown Clearwater. And very happy and excited that it is in the draft budget in the House and Senate for $1 million, essentially to move the preliminary design that was done almost 10 years ago, and cost estimates, update those, and move it as far along as it's possible to final design so that we could implement, construct the project. Perhaps try to get some federal dollars, maybe Tiger money or some other kind of funding to support it. But to construct a independent lane across the bridge, across the Clearwater Causeway Bridge.
And just because I'm a stickler for technicalities, this is a public meeting, it is not in the budget because the budget has not been constructed or released. We have commitments from our champions that especially since we have Senator Latvala as the appropriation chair in the Senate, we have commitments from Senator Brandis, we have talked with Representative Latvala, we have commitments that they will support the $1 million in the initial budget requests. So, yeah, until it is printed and we have a copy of it, it's not actually in it. I just want for technicality, just because, if we go back and something happens between now and then, because we know how the process works, we have commitments. Correct, Alan?
Yeah, that's correct. We've got commitments from the chair, both at the subcommittee and the full committee level, Brandis and Latvala, and we have a strong indication from the staff director in the subcommittee in the Senate that she has talked with all that she's basically checked all the blocks that need to be checked as far as DOT and obviously with the chairs, and we briefed her on PSTA's most recent trip. Brad and Patty and I went and saw her and sat down with her and walked her through what we were trying to do, and she gave us a very strong indication that she felt comfortable with the chair's permission to include it in the initial Senate draft. So again, as Natalie said, it's not printed, it's not done. That'll be another few weeks before we see a chairman's draft. But every indication right now is that it is going to be in the Senate budget initially, and we feel not quite as good about the House budget, only because the House budget is going to be very slim this year on projects anyway. Representative Latvala, rather, certainly has given us a strong indication that he is making it a high priority, and he's trying to get it done, but we don't have the same strong level of commitment at the staff level, in the House. Again, simply because of the mood of the House this year, for no reason, nothing to do with our project. That goes to the $2.2 billion worth of projects that have been submitted already. So.
Okay,
You want to go back to 4B?
sure.
4B is the transportation disadvantage funding. I don't know, Alan or Natalie, you want to cover that? Latest on that?
Alan, would you like to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the latest indication is that Senator Brandis, and well, let me back up. We all know the study that was funded last year. That study is apparently complete but not yet released. We met with the director of transportation disadvantage while we were in Tallahassee, and he let us know that the draft report is available. He just hasn't finalized it yet. We have asked the staff director and Senator Brandis to speed up the process of having that released so that we can see the official recommendations of the study. Obviously, from there, we're probably gonna have some questions. I think just from our meeting, we have some questions already in our minds of what we would like to know about the study and why the results are being given the way they're being given. But we want to see the final report before we ask those questions, obviously. So we've asked them to speed that process up. I believe what will happen, I talked to the chairman last week, and I'll be with him tomorrow night, with Chair Brandis tomorrow night, and I'll follow up with him. Again, I believe what's going to happen is that he's going to ask the director of the Transportation Disadvantage Commission to brief him privately, he and the staff director, on the report, and then brief the committee perhaps as early as I believe it was March 15th. That date might be wrong. Was that the date?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Was it March 15th?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that is tentative right now. That he will brief the whole committee. That will be kind of the public open opportunity for us to work with the chair and staff on having some questions we may have answered. And it all comes down to, as you will all remember, the report comes down to the formula differences and how funds are allocated between urban and rural counties. They came up with, our understanding is that there's going to be a few suggestions in there, maybe not as many suggestions as we would have liked. I think maybe they culled that list a little bit deeper than maybe they should have. But again, once we see the report, we'll know more, and we'll be able to dive into it and probably push back on some of the areas where we think maybe they missed some things. And so that's going to be that's kind of the important step. We're working with Senator Brandis' staff to have that pushed out as quickly as possible, so we've got enough time to really analyze it.
And Alan, that was one of the points that you just made, is that when we met with staff when we were in Tallahassee, we were told that as they had done the study, they had culled it down to 3 options that they would then present to the legislature. But there were many more options that they had left on the cutting room floor. And so that, I think, is going to be one of our questions at the end of the day, is if there were other options that were for consideration, what was the criteria that was used to filter which ones would actually be viable and presented for the legislature? Not knowing what any of them look like, I think that's one of the questions that we would have, is how that was constructed as far as the criteria for what was in fact viable.
This whole issue, as we found out when we were in Tallahassee, is a surprising to me struggle. The executive director of the Commission for Transportation Disadvantage, the state employee that's over this program, is obviously hesitant to reveal the study. And he has sent me emails directly saying he does not think the formula should be changed or considered being changed, even though the study was commissioned by the legislature, and now, only thanks to our urging, has this tentative date of March 15th for a presentation to the legislature even been scheduled. I think without our efforts, the study would be, I don't know what would happen to the study, but it would never be revealed.
Well, I think one of the takeaways that we had too from the meeting is that one of the terms or the framing that we got from the staff member was that there was a desire to maintain the structure and have stability. They wanted to maintain stability of the formula. And I think that, that I think was of concern for us, and that's again goes back to which options. If options are only being presented because those are the options that keep the formula stable, that isn't necessarily, I think, the intent of the legislature. They wanted to see what the most appropriate, highest and best, outcome formula would be to assure that there's equity and that there's, that the resources are being allocated appropriately. So stable was the word he kept using, is that we need to keep the formula stable, we need to keep the funding stable. And I think that's what we want to wait and see what is actually presented forward and what is left on the floor as far as options, and if in fact keeping it the same or stable was the filter, that would be of concern to us. If there is a better, more equitable, viable, and appropriate plan out there that's not being considered.
Yeah.
If I could, what is this about the study being revealed? Isn't it public record? How can you not reveal it?
That's
I don't
what
know.
we want to know.
That's a good question. I don't know how that
Because
works.
it's still a
Everything
draft.
here.
So
I'm sorry,
yeah,
is it still a draft?
Right, yeah, so it's still titled draft. He said there were some, and it was very interesting in our meeting, he mentioned that the only thing he needed to clean up was the executive summary. He didn't mind sharing it, just as long as we knew it was just a draft and that the summary might change, but then he never did. He never shared it after that. Even though we asked, and he still hasn't shared it with the Senate. So yes, it would be a public record, but not until he officially finalizes it, which is why we're asking the chairman and his staff to speed up the process of that official submission.
May I?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Our expert.
Well, I'm not an expert on anything, I promise you that. However, it is so important to me. Last week, we had a TD meeting with all of our providers and users of the system and so forth. And we serve in Pinellas County less than 10% of the demonstrated need of transportation disadvantage. Less than 10% of the need, not of the entire county, in general population.
What is the
So-
need?
I don't have that with me, Janet, because I told you I'm not an expert. However, I'm sure that Ross probably has the need.
The need would be eligible people that are defined as transportation disadvantaged, I guess.
Those persons, to be on the program, you have to be either physically or mentally challenged. You have to be under 150% of federal poverty guidelines
For your income.
for income. So you are either physically, mentally challenged, or you are transportation deprived because of income. Okay? So we serve less than 10% of that population. To take those figures and extrapolate them into what county? Is Flagler County or one of the other counties that is not so densely populated would be a challenge for me or anyone else. And what has been happening in the past is rural counties have claimed the lion's share according to need in the past. And they don't want to change that formula to share with those in the most need. Alan, is that pretty close?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely accurate. That's the challenge that we've faced even in years past before. And the reason, quite frankly, we asked for the study, because what we've gotten ourselves caught up in previously is that other senators that represent rural counties who have talked about their lack of infrastructure, so their need for increased dollars, even though their demand is less by population, by pure numbers, they don't have the infrastructure. And so there's been a back and forth, especially in the Senate, over that issue. And that's why we asked for the study, which is why it was a little disheartening, quite frankly, that the commission chose to apparently limit the number of options, which is why I think that's going to be a main point of contention for us when the study's released.
So, I'm kind of almost to the point of desperate that somebody realizes, opens up their eyes and says, this is not a fair playing ground. This is not meeting the need of the people
Whoever said it.
of the state of Florida. Pardon?
Who said it's fair?
I said, where did you ever get the idea that it was fair?
Oh, I don't know, I just grew up in school. Pledging
Urban rural
allegiance.
is every funding flow that comes out of Tallahassee, there's always whether it's education, transportation, or whatever, the DCD, I mean, that's a battle that happens every year on every issue, and they tweak the formulas every time, yeah.
And the challenge is always equal versus equitable. Fair is something that's, I mean, again, what you define as fair is, it's a perspective thing. It's relative to your perspective. So, you know, it's one of those things where the fair argument unfortunately doesn't resonate because there's 8 sides to that, you know, position. So it's a matter of, you know, equitable versus equal and what they feel at the time and whoever is in the position to have the influence to garner. I mean, Senate presidents, they get their fair share of, you know, everything. So it's again, that talking point unfortunately is going to be met with the exact same talking point from the other side.
Okay, one thing further, we were asking what happened to our Medicaid dollars. Where did they go? Well, we have a person that represents regional Medicare, Medicaid at our meeting. And what we found out was it went to managed care. And managed care has X number of rides you are allowed per month. Otherwise, you need to figure it out yourself. You can go through extensive reports from the doctor and reasons for this and reasons for that to get them to give you more than 4 rides per month. But usually people say it's not worth the effort. Call the ambulance and go to the hospital. That's where our Medicaid went.
Yeah, that is another, it's a related issue, but the same agency within the state, this Transportation Disadvantage, Commission for Transportation Disadvantage oversees, or previously oversaw, Medicaid-funded transportation across the state. PSTA in Pinellas County, PSTA 5 years ago, probably received $400,000 or $500,000 a year in Medicaid dollars to that a local broker, transportation broker of Medicaid services called TMS. They were under contract with the state to provide transportation, and they would buy bus passes from us, and it was a fairly substantial revenue source. That $500,000 has gone to zero. The state took over all of the transportation brokerage a couple of years ago now, and the money has gone to zero. And the question is, well, what happened to all those trips under Medicaid and some parts of Medicare? Your transportation to and from doctor's appointments is free to the person. It's paid for by Medicaid, and you're supposed to be able to get that. But now all Medicaid and Medicare services are being brokered by these state brokerage or regional brokerage firms. The healthcare itself, plus the transportation, is all being brokered out, and maybe they're putting these rations on it, or maybe they're not even providing the transportation like they're supposed to, is an open question. And we did have that discussion with Steve in Tallahassee as well. The issue, though, is we can't tell. There's no public agency in Pinellas County or anywhere that can tell what happened to the trips, because that information is not public record. The database that the state carries on who is in their program and whether they're getting transportation or not, the state won't reveal. Orlando, who was
System-wide change when they went to the new, program, with the way that they're handling all of the citizens that are on Medicaid. So that it's not as though TD is the only component of the system statewide. Larger, grappled with that at a level that is, beyond the one piece we're talking about. So it's a much bigger issue statewide, because if you look at the overall state budget, I mean, Medicaid is a growing component, and is consuming an abundance of the state budget and general revenue.
I just, am in great hopes that we can find somewhere to get some more TD funding, because we just keep looking at the need.
So, I would rack up our progress on 4B as steady but tough sledding, with a hopeful March 15th, maybe presentation. We've covered 4C, the capital, the bridge project, and then moving on now to 4D. This is an item on our agenda. This is the HART PSTA MOU, which I signed yesterday after the PSTA board, or 2 days ago, after the PSTA board approved the small changes that the HART board made to it, you recall. So I'll get that to Natalie and to RSA to make sure, when asked, legislators have the right version that has those changes. I don't know if Natalie or Alan, you want to give any update on our call last week. You had a little bit of possible news about legislation related to MPOs or TBARDA or anything on that.
Well, I think the most important thing to talk about is, and again, there's several pieces of the puzzle that have been kind of floating out there. Nothing necessarily has come into, complete focus, but there is no bill for a merger of PSTA and HART. There is no bill out there right now that has been filed that specifically addresses any of the, the governance components per se that is out there and active. But there are a lot of conversations out there, and I know that there's some bills that are on deck to potentially be filed. There has been a bill that was out there, and that Jackie Toledo filed, that is something that is out there to actually change some governance around TBARDA on their advisory committee. But there's conversations out there about what do they do with TBARDA, and this is something that came out of the BALD meeting as well. Is there conversation, and is there going to be an appetite for any kind of refocusing, a scale down, a change in how TBARDA is operating, and how does that affect the overall conversations that we're having, that Janet has been leading across the counties around the region, so that is the big piece. But at this point, there is not a bill specifically filed, but we know that Senator Galvano is very engaged and very interested in this conversation. We know that Senator Latvala obviously is working potentially on a bill. I know that, Janet, you've worked with him, and so I'll leave to you.
And there is a draft.
Right, it's not public yet,
I
though.
know,
Yeah.
but I just,
Yeah.
so that in itself, to me, is a good sign that they're taking it at least seriously enough to get a draft and for discussion.
This is on your proposal, or is
It's
it
a
on
combination
the
of,
MPO consolidation?
well, my proposal, the Tampa Bay Partnership proposal, both of them have the MPOs and a governance structure that kind of forces them to work together. And the idea is that they, because they're also worried about losing their $350,000. But incentivized to the point where they can receive more is what we ultimately want to do. And we've got conversation going on with the federal transportation folks to ensure that they are, going to continue with their onboarded process of having one MPO in a region. So, because that's the way it is right now, but who knows what's going to happen with.
But I think the legislative update really will come once Senator Latvala settles on what he's moving forward with, because at the end of the day, he's going to be the one who, decides what he's filing, what he's willing to champion. But I think that is a conversation that is happening in concert, needs to be, there's definitely some conversations going on about Senator Galvano's role in that. Again, recognizing that T-BARTA and its current role and any future refocusing of that, that Galvano was instrumental when he was in the House, and he was the author and has pride of authorship on that. And with his position futuristically in leadership, the timing of that. So whether the question of whether a study is done, again, gotta love studies, but if there's a study that is done, if there is something else, that will come futuristically, whether there is a small adaptation that happens first. Again, those decisions are being discussed and made, and I know Janet's very instrumental in that, but at this point, nothing has been publicly released, and there's nothing for us to yet weigh in on legislatively from our perspective as to what we support or don't support specifically to the legislation to be filed.
So, but Natalie, it was my understanding that they do have a commitment, they being everyone that's working on the issue, for that 200,000 to do that regional study, because all the studies for the last 45 or 50 years that have been done heretofore have been done focused on with boundary lines in them. Like either they were looking at Pinellas or looking at Hillsborough, but they've never really done one that's the 100,000-mile view of what does that look like if you're not thinking boundaries and you're just considering density and congestion and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's the thing that we're trying to focus on for the study that FDOT is supposed to be doing. And that's the focus of that May 12th collaborative lab that is on the calendar.
Okay, yeah, that is, I don't know if this is right, I wrote MPO governance study. I don't know if that's what it's being called.
I don't think it's.
I don't think that's the official name of it, but.
Well, and again, that kickoff and my legislative update on existing current is, they're not mutually exclusive, but they're not one and the same either.
They're not the
so,
same.
Yeah.
And if Senator LaValle comes up with something bold and dramatic, maybe the May 12th might change its format, who knows, but I think that's what's going on with
But
that.
it's a work in progress.
I'm hopeful.
And again,
Yeah.
until we see what the legislature, at the end of the day, until something is filed, it's still a moving target. It's still a work in progress. There's still conversations and dialogue to be had, and there's a lot of people still having opinions that are being weighed.
So have you had any conversations, your team, have you had any conversations? Alan, are you still there? Alan?
Yes, yeah, I'm here.
Have any of you had a conversation with Corcoran about his support of this transportation initiative? Because my understanding about a month and a half or so ago was that he really liked it.
I have not talked to the speaker directly about it. I think the only conversation we've really had, and Natalie can correct me, I know you have, Commissioner, had some conversations with Representative Sprouse, who's obviously on the leadership team.
Yeah.
Who the speaker would probably lean on to make a decision about his support. But I don't know that anyone's had a conversation directly with the speaker about it.
No, at this point, we're still at the chairman position, working with them as they decide what they are going to move forward. And then that would be, obviously, they're going to work on the House side and the Senate side. They'll work with their respective leadership on what they feel is either there's an appetite for, that is congruent with the principles and goals and priorities that they have set forth. So yeah, we've not yet, again, session have not started and bills not yet have been formulated. We've not, taken it to the leadership yet.
Good. Well, I did hear through my grapevine, for whatever that's worth, that Bill Galvano he liked the plan. He recognizes that it has a lot of possibilities to really get something solid done.
And now the devil's in the details.
Yeah, and then it was was Will Weatherford that suggested building some level of criteria and metrics for other counties that aren't part of the original foundation to be able to come in as they meet those metrics. And I
Come
thought
into what?
Come into the new transit authority.
guess I would need more context on that, but yeah.
We'll talk.
Okay, just to finish up on the state legislative report, I found out yesterday that the chamber, the Pinellas Chamber trip, joint chamber trip idea has been canceled.
They do that every year. What are they thinking?
Travis told me they canceled it, and that St. Pete Chamber is going to go to Tallahassee at the end of March with their Leadership St. Pete group, and they're gonna welcome Robin and the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber, and maybe Clearwater if Clearwater wants to go. But that's what he told me.
Interesting.
I'd love to know the background on that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's on the past couple of years.
Yeah, I don't know if you talked to
I haven't talked to
Jerry or.
Jerry yet, but I will.
But I think it's March 28th and
Did you say why?
29th. Well, what he said was he felt like that the St. Pete Chamber and maybe, although, you know, he kept adding chambers, so then it's like the whole group. They felt like they were doing all the work and other chambers were not carrying the proper amount of weight, and so they decided just to do it themselves.
Alan, you're close to them. Do you have any intel?
I mean, Alan pretty much did it all.
No, I don't know exactly why they canceled it. My heart wasn't broken because I sponsor that trip every year, so it saved me a little money. But I don't know why they decided to do it. Travis just kind of called me out of the blue and said they had decided to. The way he explained it to me was it was just simply a consolidation of effort. That it seemed like when Leadership St. Pete is in town, they have the exact same conversations that the Pinellas Chamber has while they're there. And so it seemed like they were hitting the members on almost the exact same agendas. And so it seemed duplicative. It didn't seem to make sense. So now they're going to join the Leadership St. Pete trip. And so as Brad said, it's the 28th through the 30th. I sponsored that trip as well. So I'll be there for most of their activities. But how it was explained to me, and there could be some other backstory I'm not aware of, but how Travis explained it to me was that from the St. Petersburg side at least, it was simply just a duplicative trip that didn't seem like it was worth the chamber essentially going twice. So that's kind of the story I got.
Okay. Well, okay. Anything else on this issue?
I think we're ready to
See
move on to
Chandra
federal.
coming to the table. She must have an update.
Well,
Yes.
just a reminder before we move off of the state stuff that between the three of us, between RSA and Susky Consulting, we'll be with Senator Latvala and Senator Brandis this week. Before session starts, kind of with an opportunity to kind of touch both of them, before things get crazy next week. So if we have any updates, obviously we'll have an opportunity to talk to them about some of the things we talked about on the call and socialize a little bit with them. So if anything comes out of that, we'll be sure to send an update.
Well, I hope he has his cranky pants off.
And he'll be at a baseball game for a fundraiser. Something tells me he'll be in a good mood.
Well, okay then.
Ron got him a suite, he'll be good.
What?
We got him a suite, he'll be good.
Okay, moving on to the federal agenda. Cassandra's here to update, and we have Chandra from Van Squake. I don't know if anyone else is on the phone from Van Squake.
I heard the phone beep. Have we been joined by anyone?
Chandra? Is that your name?
Shannon.
Shannon. I'm sorry. Shannon, are you on the phone?
Where's Mary Scott when we need her? Oh, she hasn't started yet.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anybody on the phone?
Shannon, are you on the phone from Van Squake? You were. Maybe not.
She was at the beginning.
Maybe I was sort of falling off, maybe.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Okay,
Oh, well.
so
That's all right.
Cassandra, I'm sure you can pitch in.
Yes.
Oh, here comes somebody.
Hello? That was probably Alan hanging up.
Okay. Well, we have been in touch with the Federal Transit Administration to meet with them during the APTA Legislative Conference, which is about 2 weeks. It's the 13th, 14th. And so they've been very receptive to us meeting about the Central Avenue BRT. We're finalizing some of the technical reports that we need to get to them and to the region in order for them to take a look at what we've done so far, give us some feedback, and then be prepared to put in our application for a small starts funding request at the end of August of this year. So we're still on track to do that. They're, like I said, they're prepared to sit down and meet with us and take a look at what we've done. The city of St. Petersburg has been very helpful in getting those products reviewed and so that we can get them to the feds. But other than that, we're moving along with that. We'll be having some public meetings on that in April.
Excellent.
And then the discussion of our Uber programs and the TNCs in general. So we have talked to our regional office about the programs that we're running, and there hasn't been a place in the National Transit Database for us to report those. So the way that our federal funding, when we talk about a lot of our products or projects that Debbie talks about, and she says they're federally funded by a grant, it's usually the formula dollars that are coming back to us. So the way that we get those formula dollars is we report through the National Transit Database information about population and our ridership, and that translates into money back to us. One of the things that we've been struggling with is counting those innovative programs because they don't fit neatly into a particular reporting criteria. We've talked to Region 4 about it and discussed putting that into one of the modes that already exists, so using a venue within the National Transit Database that already exists and just going ahead and reporting those. And we will be doing that for fiscal year 17. In the meantime, we are talking to them about how they'd like to see this move forward, because a lot of other agencies are having the discussion, and so we're leading that national discussion on how we take programs like this and turn them into formula dollars. So we'll continue that conversation with FTA and the people who run the National
It reminds
Transit.
me very similar of the TDC discussion. So step one is to call our Uber rides a museum. And then number two is maybe to change the formula.
Change the what?
Change the definition of the formula, which will be a harder.
It's a creative conversation, for sure.
That's a joke, right?
That is a
was a
joke,
joke, yeah.
that is a joke.
Has Uber finally come on board? I know we had an issue with them telling us the numbers. Are they now sharing the numbers with us? The rides? 'Cause they weren't, at one point they were being,
I mean, relative
It was
to Uber,
destinations, wasn't
Uber is doing a lot better than they were, thanks to sort of us pressing the envelope a little bit on that, and them finding more comfort that we weren't going to reveal any secrets to their competitors. They have been giving us more information. They also called and told us that we were going to be their pilot case to reveal lots more information with some fanfare. They were all excited about this. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen that happen. But they have given us now ridership data on our different programs, aggregate ridership data, aggregate cost data. Not everything that the National Transit Database asks. You know, some things they ask are like number of vehicles. Well, Uber doesn't really even know, it doesn't track the number of vehicles that they have in Pinellas County at any one time. Anyone can sign up.
it's an ever-changing, yeah.
Yeah, so some things are just impossible for Uber to fit, but they're giving us more data. Yeah.
We're also leading them through, again, that national discussion, and they are understanding that if they don't fit into one of the programs that are reported under the National Transit Database, that we'll either have to short report or we'll have to create a new place for them to report going forward. but they've been open to that discussion.
Okay, moving on to 5C.
This is the grant programs.
Yeah, I was really hoping that someone from Van Square would be here to give us any update on that, but, you know, this is a legislative priority that's on our list that we will be speaking with our congressional delegation of supporting the existing transportation programs in the transportation budget. But I don't have really anything else to update on that. We had hoped that the federal government would have issued a, what do they call it? A notice of funding, basically putting out the notice that please apply for grants and give a deadline. But since the new administration has taken over in January, they have not set any of those deadlines for LONO, which funds the potential additional electric buses, Sandbox program, which funds innovative programs like our Uber and Lyft programs, State of Good Repair, SOGR, which could fund bus replacements for us, or Tiger, which could maybe fund that Clearwater Beach bridge or something major.
So by the time we have our next meeting, I anticipate Mary Scott will be on board with them, and then we'll have our very own point person.
Yeah.
That'll be exciting.
Do you know what her duties will be? I don't know if
She'll be working with all of us in Pinellas County that are clients of Van Scoyac.
Oh, okay.
She's a crackerjack, isn't she, Charlie?
That's going to be very good. Well, speaking of that, we are, as Cassandra said, Cassandra, myself, and Joe Barkley from the PSTA board are going up to DC in 2 weeks for the APTA legislative conference that I know Chair Rice and Commissioner Long have been to, maybe others. You know, that March is probably not the best time to have in-depth discussions with your congressional delegation, because it seems like every single association conference is going on at the exact same time. So we're going to really try to focus on trying to meet with some more staff, like Cassandra said, meet with the FTA staff, like we did that one time, maybe right in the hotel. Give an update to them. And then the other idea would be to see if we could get our friends over at Uber, because they have a big office there in DC, to join us with the meeting on this data discussion with FTA.
So, are you working with Cesar Fernandez?
Oh, from Uber? Yeah, yeah. Now he's not. He's in Miami, I think.
Right, but
Yeah.
he covers this whole territory, and
Yeah.
I mean, he can probably help us make sure that they're there.
Yeah, I think we'll be able to do this.
Yeah. When are we going?
Then we're also planning on a second trip, April 3rd and 4th, I think it is, which Commissioner Long and Commissioner Gerard have accepted attending with me, and we're, at least my discussions with Harry had been that would be focused on meeting with the congressional delegation.
So is Darden not going? I thought Darden was going.
She originally accepted, but due to her medical treatments, she can't go.
Oh, well, maybe that'll change. It's a while, several.
It might change.
You know?
It's like her 5th week of therapy. It's like the very last of her therapy, so she didn't think it was going to change.
Not a good idea.
It might not be a good idea. So, and Commissioner Gerard, I think, will be.
I know she's excited about it.
And-
Yeah.
And that's a PSTA organized, or is that?
PSTA organized trip, and we would meet with, the focus would be to meet with our congressional delegation, Congressman Chris Bilirakis, and then Van Squarick has been pretty good about it, is getting with other key leaders on the Transportation Committee, staff members of the different House and Senate committee, very similar to Tallahassee, but have those kind of meetings in April. And Perry thought that the budget would be a little bit more revealed by then than it is in 2 weeks.
Yeah, got a lot of things to pay for.
Exactly.
Got a lot going on.
I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, are we good? What, 5D, infrastructure proposals, update, what's that, Brad?
Well, that was to support a multimodal inclusion of public transit in President Trump's infrastructure proposal,
Oh.
which he did say railways across the land or something like that in his speech last night.
He also did not say how we were paying for it.
No,
I'm waiting to hear that
he didn't.
message.
Don't worry about that.
He's gonna fix it.
Don't even start. I mean,
The Senate Democrats proposed a $1 trillion infrastructure plan that had lots of transit in it and didn't have any how to pay for it.
We need $1 trillion in the budget, so.
We do.
I'm
We
on board.
do.
I'm all for it too, but not, you can't do that again.
All right. It's not my budget. I just-
Madam Chair,
Yes.
sort of infrastructure, but a different flavor. Is there any thought of including anything in penny for Pinellas?
We're
I
working on
I think I
messaging
was,
now.
I think I was just ruled out of order. I'll accept that.
Well, just because we're trying to be very thoughtful and collaborative with all of our municipal partners on how we message the penny going forward. And so, probably a little, if we
Yeah.
haven't finalized all of that, have
No,
we?
no.
Yeah, yeah.
About 5 years ago, we were saying, gee, we missed, maybe we should, next time around, we should think about a penny. But, and-
Well, it's on the ballot this November,
Yeah.
so if you were thinking about some major initiative, we're pretty short time.
Speak now or.
Well, not only that, but if it's something major that is going to be a challenge to communicate that, then that becomes more of a challenge.
I think one thing we might be able to do is advocate just generally that transportation continue to be a key component of the program of projects. But I know yesterday at the St. Pete Chamber, the county is doing some focus groups on the messaging of it, and the city of St. Petersburg at least, and probably all the cities are putting together, are having meetings to put together their lists.
We're actually having, you're coming to this, aren't you? You coming to lunch?
Yes, but I have a doctor's appointment that I'm gonna have to leave here for in just a
Um,
few minutes. First,
county-
and then I'll be there.
County's coming to our mayor's council lunch today to discuss the penny for Pinellas and
There you go.
the team, kind of the approach, I think, so that we're all
On the
kind of
same
reading the
page.
same sheet music as to how we identify the programs that successfully have been done, you know, through signage or whatever it is, and then the proposed
Bless you.
things that people are asking for, I guess, is kind of, that's what I think is coming today. So we have a uniform thing, is that kind of a uniform way of
Yeah.
identifying projects, successful projects that have happened, and so people can see and touch and feel how successful
Yeah,
it is.
it was Mike Mydell who was at the chamber meeting yesterday, and he said they were doing some focus groups. The county,
Yeah, our communications department is doing that.
maybe some of that will be talked about at the mayor's council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I have one more question for Brad. We had a discussion with Angela Christ and on the TAG transportation proposal, and that was that going to be discussed with the executive committee first, or
We were gonna talk about it at the executive committee.
not here? I just wanted to, I couldn't.
I know Patty knows about it, but
Finish up.
I don't know if everybody knows. If you are a participant in the Florida League or the Suncoast League of Cities, you might have seen that the Suncoast League of Cities is leading this new effort to create a transportation
Yet another.
advocacy group.
Yet another.
Yet another. And there was some discussion early on that PSTA would be a member of this group, and Bill set up a meeting with Angela Christ, their executive director, and it doesn't appear as if we would be a member. We would be a card-carrying member because we're not a city. That cities and cities would be members, and that PSTA would be lumped into a category with FDOT, maybe Heart, and some others, and we would be called, I think, contributors or partners, basically providing information to cities that were interested in joining, as a subsidiary to the Florida League of Cities, in a group that is advocating on behalf of all modes of transportation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
You're now the chair.
You can do anything you want to.
Chair, then not chair, and not chair.
Okay, Cassandra, you're
Almost.
right.
Not anything, but almost.
Okay, so the members of the Suncoast League of Cities would include, but not be limited to, those people that are not a member of PSTA, not contributing member in any manner. St. Pete Beach, Treasure Island, and one that's really proud that she doesn't have a penny in PSTA is Kansas City. So, I have some real angst, this is a good word, about this tag program that won't even be a part of PSTA or transportation, and proud of it. And then to take our logo and put it on their stationery was a little
The latest version does not have our logo
far-reaching.
on there.
No, it doesn't. The last meeting I went to, our logo was off of their stationery.
As was the DOT's. Yeah.
So I have a real concern, and I belong to Suncoast League, and I believe in transportation and supporting it and in all the different areas. But I certainly think that we need to think about what we're a part of, or what we're.
Angela had said to us that the Florida League of Cities has other similar kind of compacts around the state of subgroups on water quality and things like that, that cities work together. And she was modeling this transportation group of Tampa Bay area cities to be kind of like one of those other ones.
I'm on the legislative committee, legislative finance, and what else, Bill? Something else. And then they have a committee for transportation and a few other things, and they have a committee for the homeless and a committee for this and that. But that's separate from what Angela's talking about. So, I don't know, I had a problem with it, but that's okay. That's just one.
She's,
There's
as you know,
15
she's
of
very
us.
passionate, and she was speaking eloquently and passionately about having one voice for the Tampa Bay region. And I think Bill and I looked at her and said, your one voice will join the many other one voices in a chorus of,
And her husband is
acronymed
Yeah.
agencies.
Her husband is Victor Christ, and he is very passionate about transportation.
But not
and-
necessarily the same passion.
That's true, that's
But-
true. So, there's a lot of voices, and they're getting to be more and more. I went to a meeting last night, Ben Diamond's first town hall meeting.
Oh, really?
Yes, and it was great.
Were you a
And
rider, or were you just there? Were you riding?
It was in Pinellas Park. I was there. But guess what? Every time he asked a question, every other question was transportation. I mean, everybody walked in there with their little newspaper or their written out what they want, and every other question that, was like, healthcare, transportation, babysitting, transportation. It was like that the whole night. So transportation is on a lot of people's minds.
We just gotta keep populating the Florida legislature with former PSTA board members.
Right.
So they're up to speed on all of that.
Is that a strategy?
Could be.
You're next.
Future
Can't
meeting.
make me go back.
Future meeting subjects? Hearing none, do we have any other business?
Now the fun begins, because the legislature's about to start.
Yeah.
One.
Should we talk about April's
Oh, no, look back
meeting,
on
maybe?
Oh, is there a conflict?
Yes, you guys will be in.
The DC trip is,
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we've got.
We won't be able to have a meeting on April 5th at 9 a.m., but I guess we can send out a poll
Reschedule.
whether we,
What is that, April 5th?
maybe what I'll do is talk to find out what's going on in Tallahassee, and we'll try to either reschedule or,
Well, and just obviously for purposes, we won't be in person in the month of April,
Right.
unless it happens to coincide where one of us is coming back for a whole day, but chances are we will be on the phone only.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate part that we just simply can't know that far out is what's happening on that day, because if something is going on and we have to be somewhere, that, we will obviously do our very, very best to always be available, but we just can't anticipate what might be on agenda that we're in negotiating, for. So we'll be very.
that is the day of the Florida Association of Counties will be in
Yeah.
Tallahassee,
Yeah.
so there'll be county people.
So as we do, Fridays
You'll be there.
typically Mondays and Fridays are better days in Tallahassee, because usually Monday's a travel day, so as a lobbyist, you're lighter, especially in the mornings. And then Friday afternoons are typically better for us, because again, that's the legislature's travel day, they don't usually have meetings. So, just for odds of not having any conflict of schedule for your lobbying team, Monday mornings and Friday afternoons are our best times,
Yeah.
sadly. Or really, really early
So,
in the morning.
To be determined when the April legislative committee might be.
Okay.
No, no.
Okay. Anyone want to make a motion, please?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Very much.
Anytime.
Have you been?
Is Janet coming back for 11 o'clock? She's not.
Something came up, I guess, that's why she had to leave.
She was going to a doctor's appointment.
She's going to a doctor's appointment, yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Is that what time our meeting is, 11?
11, yeah.
Patty,
Um,
you need to use it as a tool, I'm telling you.
Even if we have a quorum, we're not allowed to start it before 11, right? Because it was noticed at 11.
It was noticed